In this episode of Personal, we'll be speaking to Dean Fitzmaurice, director of Mavas Foods, trading as McDonald's in the Middlesbrough area. So then, Dean, I'm going to get straight to the point. How many teeth are actually your own?
All of them, but it's just the ones that are left. so they're all mine. I'm just missing quite a few through various acts of rugby and boxing and the military. So unfortunately, the military decided that they was going to pull some out on a tour in Kosovo. I should have realised when I went to the dentist, and it was a tent in the middle of a field, and the dentist was a guy that used to tattoo himself on a night time in the corridor, so that should have been an alarm bell ringing. I was really nervous with the dentist, and I always have been, so I was sedated, and when I came to, the tooth that they'd taken out was not the one that was painful.
Oh my goodness.
So that made one next to it wobbly. Then they took the right one out on the other side, and then I had one removed when I had my wisdom tooth removed. And then last year, the dentist that's doing the work for me now, he decided to take one of the ones on the top out as well, because he knew he was putting some implants in this year. So he said, well, may as well stick another one in the top. So, yeah, so that's where we are.
So how many lost to rugby?
So I've chipped a few to rugby. I've had to have 2 crowns and chipped a few, and I've got a couple of front fillings from rugby, and then 3 from the military. Well, 4 if you count that one as well, and then 1 from a very nice dentist. So
okay,
that's acceptable.
That was planned.
He's the professional. So yeah.
Wow. So when you had them out in this tent in the middle of a field, did you have anaesthetic?
Yeah. So all of the normal things you'd expect in a dentist was there. It was like an old chair and some anaesthetic and some sedation as well. We had some of that. So
that's always good.
Yeah, got that, and they just pulled it out, and then realised it was the other side that was really painful, and so we ended up having to pull the right one out. So that was
Did you laugh about it?
Well, at the time, because I never realised how big of a problem it was going to be later on, because obviously your front teeth aren't designed to be chewed on, so I've got very limited back teeth now. So this was when I was 19, 20. So for 22 years or so now, I've been chewing on my front teeth, which then deteriorates them. So it's kind of it's not a vanity project; it's a necessity project now. I need to put a full mouth of teeth in, and then we'll be good to go.
I mean, I would have never been able to tell if it wasn't for you been having your implants done. Yeah. And how's that experience been for you?
Horrendous, yeah. Actually, I've got to refer back to, I've got a really good dentist. He's the brother-in-law of one of my best friends, who's also a dentist, one of the world-leading orthodontists. He works down on Harley Street.
Oh, brilliant.
And he married a lady who's a fantastic dentist, and her brother is another fantastic dentist. So I'm surrounded by really good dentists, and Amit and his wife, who's actually the anaesthetist at his practice. They're just magicians. So Sandy's wife, she's called her, she managed to maintain me so that I didn't know a great deal about it, and Amit did a really professional job, but he did used to like to go into real detail about what the procedure was, because he knew I was a medic in the army. So he said, are you fine with blood and guts and everything else, which I am, but when you're talking about myself, I'm not really too happy about it. So when he just goes into real detail about, we're going to shave your jawbone down and break this and do that, I said, look, just stop telling me, just do it, and then tell me afterwards what you've done. So he took that literally on the last one, so I had no idea I was having a bone graft until I came to. So he said, we've got to take some blood before we start. I was like, okay, no worries. So he took some blood, and he said, you just don't want to know. I was like, I don't want to know. And then when I came round, I was in quite a lot of pain. He said, you're going to not like me over the weekend, because there's going to be a lot of swelling, a lot of bruising. We've had to put a graft in there. We've got 3 more implants in there. It's quite a major operation, so you're going to be in a lot of pain. So that was 4 weeks ago, and I'm still in a little bit of pain now, and still a little bit of swelling left. So yeah.
Oh my goodness, a bone graft. That sounds really serious.
Yeah, so because I've had no teeth there for so long, your bone wears away, and so it goes down to a really thin point. So if you manage like an arrowhead, you can't screw an implant into that. So what they do is they either split the bone, shave it down to create a flat edge, or they put a graft in. And on one side he managed to shave and create a flat edge. On the other side he had to put a graft in. So
did he take bone from another part of your body to do
No,
that?
It's bovine.
Oh, right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I'm not precious about that sort of thing. That's fine. It's all right. I'm all right with it.
So you're now part cow.
Yeah, apparently. I do like steak anyway, so it's a good thing. So,
Fantastic.
And I'm doing this so I can eat more steak. So.
Yeah, it's really investing in your business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I think I mentioned to you, I've got an implant as well, but just the one. And that was for kind of orthodontic work, maybe about 5-10 years ago, coming up to 10 years ago, actually. And they say that an implant has a lifespan of about 10 years. So I'm a little bit nervous about, maybe what happens after that.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know that implants did, or whether they used to. I'm not sure. My understanding was that they were going to last forever. So maybe that's another part he hasn't told me. It's veneers that have a 10-year span,
I've got one
I
of those
believe.
as well. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think they're a little bit more now. They're a lot more professional than the turkey teeth that's going on at the minute. I think the whole turkey teeth thing is still the 1980s way of doing things. If you go to professional in this country, you'll get the modern way, which lasts a lot longer, and they shave a lot less of your teeth down. So
okay,
that's my understanding. I'm not a dentist, just clearly I know a lot of them. So
yeah, that's strange.
Terrible teeth, but I've got loads of dentist friends. I mean, work that one out. Yeah.
Maybe a sign.
Oh,
but they're all going to be perfect very soon.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. So I've given him a deadline of next summer, because we're going to be doing lots of PR work for the charity event that we're going to do next year, which I'm sure we'll touch on later.
Fantastic.
So I said I want a perfect smile for then.
Wonderful. And maybe not, because here was me picturing that you had your teeth pulled out just in the middle of in the field, like while you were fighting, in terms of fighting in the war. Was it the most physically painful experience you've had in terms of the implants?
It was definitely the second one. The first one went really quite well, and after the weekend I was back at the gym and fine, a bit of swelling, take some paracetamol. The second one was quite painful for a while, but no, I mean, having played rugby for 20 years and all the things I've done to my body, there's a lot of things I've done. So I've fractured my skull, I've broke my nose in three places, I broke it 3 or 4 times, broke both my thumbs twice, I've had stitches above my eye from where I took a knee to the face, scoring a try though. I mean, it's worth it.
Yeah.
I've torn my rotator cuff. I was run over when I was 3 by a car at 60 mile an hour, so I broke my leg and was in hospital for a few months. So
my goodness,
that was probably pretty painful, but I don't remember a great deal of it. I was 3, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
So dual carriageway, my mum said to me, when we get across this road, we'll get some sweets. So I just ran straight out and just went sweeties. And next thing you know, I'm doing a triple somersault backwards, and then apparently ended up underneath the car. And I do remember because it was the 80s, I remember the ambulance being really painful, really bad suspension. I spent about 3 months in hospital, about 6 months in a wheelchair, and then 3 months on crutches. I had a cast all the way up one leg, across the top and down the other, and a bar between the two. My brother used to tip me out of the wheelchair and then use the wheelchair to play buses and just leave me just riding around on the floor. The doctors said that because I was so young, when you're young, your bones are quite supple, so I sort of bent around the car rather than breaking into bits. He said if you'd have been much older, you'd have probably shattered all of your bones. So I suppose I was lucky in one regard, but yeah.
Wow, that's amazing, and I bet for your mum that was horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, my brother tells me that they all thought I was dead, so that everyone sort of turned around because I was obviously not moving, and then I don't know where I came to, whether I was on the road or in the ambulance by the time I'd come to. I'm not sure. Yeah. And obviously horrendous for the driver. I mean, I feel really sorry for the driver because you think about those things. He was abiding by all the laws. It was me that was out of order, and I had a childhood friend who actually killed someone playing chicken. He was running, the kids were running across the road, and he killed a 13-year-old child, and he was only 18, and it ruined him. We didn't see him for a good 8 years or so, so I think about the driver a lot. He came to the hospital, bought me some gifts and stuff like that, and I hope he doesn't hold too much guilt. It wasn't his fault, it was all me.
Oh, that's why you're still in touch. Probably not.
No, I have no idea. No.
Yeah.
Maybe I should be. I can get some more gifts. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. You deserve them.
Maybe beer now instead of the toys that he brought me when I was 3. So,
or maybe you should buy him a gift.
Yeah, I should. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
That's crazy. So, I wasn't expecting that answer. That's unreal. And the only memory you have is from the ambulance going over bumps.
Yeah, I remember you used to have the triangles in hospital to pull yourself up with.
Yeah. So
obviously, because I had a cast all over the one leg, when the nurses used to come near, I used to throw the triangles at them, so they took mine off me. So I wasn't allowed to be lifted up. I think I was just, being a little bit recalcitrant because I was missing my mum and family and stuff. So my mum used to have a fur coat, and she used to leave it by my bed every night. I remember that. So I remember the smell of the coat and lying in the coat. So I do remember that. And my granddad used to come up every Sunday and bring me a dinner. And so I do remember that. But yeah, not great deals and memories from from that time or much of my childhood, really, to be honest.
That's amazing. I mean, all of those injuries sounded pretty painful, but then that just trumped everything. But like even like you fractured your skull as well?
Yeah, just prattling around in
Right.
the army. We were boxing after a couple of beers in the room and fell over a bed, and the beds are made of metal frames, and banged my head. And I woke up in the morning with yellow fluid on my pillow, which is CSF, cerebral spinal fluid, so it's a clear sign of a fractured skull. And so I went for an X-ray, and I'd fractured behind my ear on my skull. Nothing they can really do for it. You just got to protect it and just be careful with it, and not box while you'd had a couple of beers. Probably best.
Yeah.
Again, so yeah, that was the last time I did that. But I think most painful thing though that I've ever done. I'm actually an inch shorter than I used to be. I've compressed 2 cartilages in my back from heavy weights playing rugby. And every now and then I can have an episode where I'm in quite a lot of pain. And at my dentist friend's wedding, I was best man in Germany. He's German, and a couple of days before we flew for the wedding, probably 2019, I think it was. I pulled my back, and I was in agony. I mean, real bad. I was wearing like a male girdle, and it went on. I normally it lasts for a day, 2 days. This went on for about 3 weeks. And I couldn't get in cars. I had to change the seat on the plane because we had to fly to Germany, and it was just awful. I was standing sort of leaning sideways, and that was really, really the slightest movement was excruciating. So that was probably the worst pain I've been in.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, back injuries are brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously mine was childbirth, the most pain I've been in. But next to that, when you've done something to your back and you just can't move, or you just get that firing pain. Oh, horrific.
Awful. Yeah.
Oh, bless you. But yeah, you've been through quite a lot of pain in your life.
Yeah.
We've covered the physical side. Emotionally, what's the most pain you've ever been in?
I think the stock answer that most people would go to is a death, someone close to you. So my mum died when I was 27, but she was an alcoholic. So it was kind of known, if you like. We didn't know when, but we were prepared for it. We'd been told on a number of occasions that she was only going to last 24 hours, and then she'd pull through and stop drinking for a few months, and then she'd be back at it again. So it was really tough at the time, but something I worked through. I think when I was in Iraq working for doing the private military side of things, sometimes you could have really long tours that were really hard, and you didn't really have an end date to when you was going home. In the military, you tend to have an R&R date, so you get told when you're going on leave, and then you get told when the end of the tour is going because the new battalion's coming in and they're going to take over you. But when you're doing private military, if somebody's visa doesn't come in and you've got a visa, the company just keep you there or ask you to stay there because you've got a valid visa, and it takes too long. So I remember one particular tour that went on for 4.5, 5 months. And of that 4.5, 5 months, I worked every day, 12 to 16-hour days. And you're being shot at and you're being mortared, and lots of other things happened. I went to jail and other stuff. Oh. and over that time, the way you're missing your family, that is emotionally probably one of the worst things. And I sort of came home for that tour and went, right, I'm not going back, and that's it, I'm done. And
were you?
3 months later, I flew back out to Baghdad.
Oh, a man of your word.
I just took an extended time off and then realised, actually, no, I'm going to go back because, I do need to do this. But
so you had a family all that time, you were?
Yeah. I mean, my wife's been with me since forever. We've been together forever. So our eldest is 22 this year.
Wow.
And since we were both in the army together, and we're still together. So yeah. I keep saying that eventually one day she'll wake up and leave me, but no, she keeps gallivanting around the world with me. We've been through thick and thin together, so yeah.
That's so lovely. I love a good childhood romance. So
it's good.
And she must really understand where you're coming from when you were in the military, having been in there herself.
Yeah, I think so. I think she's been a nurse as well, so there's two sides to that. If you ever see a nurse in hospital, they're the kindest people in the world. If you're ever married to a nurse, they're removed of all emotional attachment and they have no sympathy at all. But so she's probably helped me move forward as well. When you're feeling a little bit sorry for yourself, she's the sort of one that she'll go, come on, suck it up, let's go again and deal with it. So she's I couldn't have done anything that I've done the last 3 years without my wife. She's been amazing. Well, my whole life, but in particular, the last 3-4 years of us changing completely what we were doing and what we are doing now, and moving back from Dubai and everything else it's only because she's been there.
Yeah,
it's been made it so much easier.
Yeah, I mean, we had some of those questions planned for later, but let's go straight to that. You know, you've lived in Iraq, I think, UAE, Germany.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
are you just bored of
I've
the
been
UK?
yeah. I've been to a lot of countries and every continent on the planet. So most of those are through work, some through travel and leisure. But you know, my previous role before I came home to the UK to buy the business I'm doing now, I looked after the Middle East and Africa, and I had India in there as well because no one was looking after that. So most of my time was spent on a plane or in a hotel somewhere, going to deepest, darkest Africa, into the middle of a jungle somewhere, to some random graphite mine, gold mine, oil and gas site, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And normally to places where you don't want to go on holiday. So I've been to 6 of Donald Trump's 7
Wow.
on a regular basis. When I try to go to America now for a holiday, there's normally a few questions at customs as to why is your passport full of all these, and why do you have 2 passports?
Really?
And that sort of thing. So yeah.
Why do you have 2 passports?
Because you tend to have one for leisure and one for business. So
Okay.
my business one is full of stamps from Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Pakistan, Iraq, Mozambique, South Africa, you know, all the nice places, or not so, South Sudan, Nigeria. And then I have a clean passport to travel on where you don't get asked so many questions. So when you want to go on holiday with your family, you know, and just go to New York for Christmas shopping, it's easier to have a clean passport. And it's a totally above board thing. What happens, lots of people who've done my sort of job, you just get a letter from your employer to the British government to say that you do this job and these are the countries you visit, and you can get issued a second passport. It's fine.
Oh, I never knew that. Well, I'm not going to ask questions about Africa and mines and stuff because my husband bores me about that all the time. But I want to know about Iraq because, you know, from listeners, like UK citizen listening to the news all the time, it always sounds so hostile and dangerous. What was it really like to live there?
Strange, because it was really dangerous. And at the time when I went out there, the back end of 2008, 2009, it was the most dangerous job in the world to do what we was doing. There's a road called Route Irish where we go from the airport into the green zone where we were living at the time, and to drive down that road every day was the most dangerous job in the world. It was generally not if you got contacted, it was when you was contacted in some way. But at the same time, some of the best times of my life in terms of I felt so much love for the people and for the culture and for the country. It generally wasn't them. They tended to be, when you get into the intelligence of it all, because I used to write a lot of the intelligence reports, it was pretty much a proxy war that was being fought by Saudi and Iran in Iraq. And most of the people that were setting off these big bombs and suicide bombs, they tend to have come from Arab-speaking African countries or Yemen or somewhere in the region. They're not actually, most of them weren't actually from Iraq that were causing the problems. The Iraqis themselves, they were sick of war. They'd done 3 decades of war. They'd had enough. They just wanted to move on and they wanted to be peaceful. And the guys in Baghdad are some of the most educated, passionate, caring people I've ever met. You know, they were just unbelievable. I did actually really like being there. I just hated being away from my family. I wouldn't take my family to that environment.
Okay. That was going to be my next question.
Yeah,
were they there with
it
you?
was no. It's far too dangerous. I mean, it was just dangerous. I mean, I spent quite a lot of time in Mosul, which is statistically the most deadly city in the world, or certainly was then. And you know, Fallujah and Ramadi and all these places that you heard about on the news. I used to go on a regular basis.
I know them from the news.
I used to go there on a regular basis and
Wow.
you know, and get into all kinds of bother that you could write a book on. And the only reason I'm still here today is because of my Iraqis. So these people that everybody was demonizing because we like to generalize whole societies and we say it's Muslims or it's Iraqis that are causing this problem. It was neither of the above. And they stood by me in some of the worst contacts. They came to jail with me, did things, you know, for me and with me because we had a bond. We were friends.
Were you helping them ultimately?
I mean, they were employees. They were paid by us, but I looked after them. I do that. I think that's one of my mottos in life. I think it doesn't matter if you're a rugby team, if you're in the army, if you're selling PR, you're selling tyres. You've got to look after your team around you that's helping you do that, because you can't do everything and you can't be everywhere. So you've got to train your team. You've got to make sure that you arm them with the tools and the education to do the job that you need to do. And there's got to be a trust there. There's got to be a trust for them to want to go that extra mile for you because they know that you will do the same for them. And it's about trying to create that culture within every environment that I've been in, and that was one of the ones where it sort of paid back to me in him still being alive.
Yeah, I mean, there's teamwork and there's teamwork, isn't there? And going to jail for you?
Oh,
Tell me more about that.
Well, it used to happen at quite frequent. You'd be surprised to know.
What, were you going to jail?
So me and others. So fast forward to about 2010, 2011, the British pulled out in the back end of 2008, and then the Americans started to pull out and started to stop backing the private military.
Is this in Iraq still?
In Iraq. Yeah. And so what happened is then the Iraqis started to take back over power. Now, some of the Iraqi police and the army were terrorists, were former Ba'ath Party, or there'd be Al-Qaeda Iraq, which, some of which became ISIS or IS in the beginning, which was ISIS, the Islamic State Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, and then it became just the Islamic State because they wanted to extend further.
Right.
And so there were a lot of terrorists within the police and the army, which we knew about, that were controlling things. So when power went back over to them, it became even more dangerous to stop at checkpoints and places like that. But equally, because we sort of treated the police and the army as a threat before that, we never stopped at any checkpoints. Sometimes there'd be some exchange of fire or some aggression in these checkpoints from both sides. They started to want to get their own back. So we were made to stop at checkpoints. You'd have to strip your vehicle out. They'd make you count your ammunition on the street, and if you're doing that, you then don't have magazines loaded, ready to return fire. If you get in contact, it's really, really dangerous. They were confiscating bits of equipment, arguments over paperwork. It was a really complicated time as we transitioned through. So it ultimately resulted in lots of expats going to jail for money, because it's still quite a corrupt nation. And so you'd go to jail because your paperwork was incorrect, in inverted commas, or you're carrying too much ammunition, or you're not supposed to have flashbangs, or whatever it is. There'd be some reason why you go to jail. Usually that was dealt with between your company and the police station in some way, exchange of diesel, cash, food, whatever it is, and you was released, and then on the odd occasion you'd stay a little bit longer. So yeah, been a few times. I got taken once because I was driving Saddam's car, which was quite fun. So I was driving into the green zone, and the guy did a search on his computer. He said, "This is Saddam's car." I said, "No, it's not. It's mine." I said, "I'm clearly driving it." He said, "Saddam's been dead 5 years." And he's like, No, it's Saddam's. And under the new laws, all assets have to be seized and destroyed. Okay. I said, "Well, no problem. I live 300 metres over there. I'll take all my weapons, my guys, and you can have the car. I'll walk." And he said, No, you've got to go to jail now. Okay.
Do not pass go.
Yeah. The funny thing was, he then got in the back seat. He went, "I don't have a car, so you're going to have to drive us." So I had to drive myself to jail, and I've got a car following me with some guys behind, and we go to jail. Now, my driver at the time was a guy called Uday, and I nicknamed him Father of Ox, Abu Jamus. And he was huge, 6 times Mr. Iraq. He was massive. He's 6'6". He honestly would put Arnold Schwarzenegger in the day to shame. He was a massive guy. And so Uday's my driver, and then I had my interpreter, who I called Ali American, because he spoke with an American accent. He really clear, good English, American accent. And I once asked him, I said, "Ali, your English is very good. Where did you learn it?" He said, "Movies, mate." I'm like, right, okay. So we go to jail, and we get to the cell, which is just it's a concrete cell. There's prayer mats, a hole in the corner, 3 guys in the room, no lights on, and the police officer said, "In you go." And Abu Jamus goes to walk him first, and he slaps him in the chest, and he said, "No, only the expat." And back to my previous point about creating a good team who are going to be there for you, Abu Jamus turned around and he said, "Mr. Dean, go, I go." And I was like, "Good lad, come with me."
Now that's like a movie.
Yeah, you can come with me because you're massive. So Abu Jamus came into jail, and then Ali American came in, and we get in the cell, and you know, I've hidden a phone at this point.
Should I ask where?
Yeah, no, you probably know. It's not inserted, but it's in that region. And so I've hidden this phone, and I'm waiting to sort of get messages out to people that we're in jail, and this is what's happening. And I'd sent a message to my wife saying, "Can't talk, in jail. Call one of my friends." So at that point, she decides to start ringing and ringing and ringing. So this
no.
phone's vibrating, and I'm trying to negotiate with this police captain over our release, and I'm like trying to speak louder to hide this phone. I'm like, and then eventually I managed to sneak off and answer the phone and said, "Stop ringing me. I've hidden the phone. Like, stop it." Like,
It's usually stop ringing. I'm down the
I
pub,
know,
but no,
exactly.
I'm in jail.
Yeah, I'm in jail. Like, stop. And so she did. So we laugh about that now. So we go in the cell, and it ends up. This goes on to the following day. If you don't sort of deal with it by 5 o'clock, they go home. So he said, if your company doesn't come up with, I think at the time they wanted $15,000 or something, then you stay here, and we're going home. So 5 o'clock comes, no one turns up. So we stay.
No.
We stay overnight, and later on in the night, there's a melee, there's an argument in Arabic, and I can speak Arabic and I understand some words and can have basic hellos and pleasantries, but I certainly know all the swear words, so I know what's being thrown backwards and forwards, and I'm like, wow, there's some real disgusting stuff about sisters and all sorts going on here. Right. I need to step in. So I sort of stopped and said, well, what's going on? And he said, these guys have said that when you fall asleep, they're going to strangle you to death. And I was like, oh, okay. Right. So most Iraqis are traditionally quite small, and I'm 6'6" and 120 kilos. So I walked over to him and towered over and leaned over and said, who's going to strangle me? You or you? I said, don't worry, I don't sleep. And then I walked back to the corner, absolutely crapping myself. I went, right, guys, we're snagging on. Let's take it in turns. We're staying awake. And so, yeah, we sort of took in turns to stay awake. Next morning, whatever was exchanged for our release, and we got out and went back to work and went back on mission.
Just a normal day at work?
Just a normal day. It happens so often that you kind of rolled with it. At first, when it started to happen in the transition, we were all pretty nervous and everyone was a bit on edge. And I do know that some people got into a bit of bother with that. There was exchanges of fire. There was one guy that was beaten up in a checkpoint quite badly, really badly by some Iraqi police because he was trying to fight back. And I think you sort of have to, there's a thing in the military called situational awareness. You've got to read the room. Is it really a threat, or are they just trying to mess you around and they're after some money or whatever it is? And how do I break that threat down? And my way was to learn Arabic. So a lot of the Westerners, the expats, they didn't learn any Arabic. They knew the odd word. So I learned how to say phrases. And that really broke things down on checkpoints, because the first question they go, where's the expat from, or what passport, or whatever. They'd want to know if I was American normally.
Right.
And they'd be fishing for information, and there'd be expletives that go backwards and forwards, and I would tell them, Dir balak, ana Taj Razi, which means be careful, I'm the king round here. they go, what? How do you know these words? And then you say a few more words, you ask them how their family is, whatever, and then they just start laughing. They're like so impressed that you've learned a bit of their language or a bit of their culture, and then they let you go. So I got us out of so many situations just by having a laugh and a joke with the guys on the, please help me in Arabic. They'd be like, wow, he's learned please help me. That's impressive.
Yeah, that's so valuable.
Yeah,
and I think that's such a transferable skill, speaking each other's language.
Yeah.
Even if we're both, English, thinking about how they're feeling and everything like that. You must have learnt so many transferable skills for what you do now.
Sorry to interrupt, but just a quick word about our sponsor, Be Daily. I've been subscribing to the Be Daily now since starting my business. It provides relevant and informative information directly to my inbox, not just about the North East, but also national news. If you're interested in subscribing, we'll put the link in the description box so you can get the business news directly to your inbox. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah, and I've worked with so many different cultures, and I think some of the things, like you said, I would always learn a few words in everybody's language. And I have lots of international people that work for me now, and I talk to them, I go, I've been to your country, or I can say a few words in their language, and they go, wow, that's amazing. You learn about different cultures, different religions, and how that happens. So, we're approaching Ramadan right now, so we're turning one of our training rooms into a prayer room for our Muslim employees to be able to pray. I'm trying to work out which way Mecca is so I can draw an arrow on the floor. I know these things are important to them.
Yeah.
And so that's important to me, to make sure that they feel included and they're part of it. So we're looking at sort of that side of things. So I do think that it makes me a really inclusive and diverse employer. I understand and treat everyone for how I find them, not for where they're from or what religion they are or what sexual orientation they are. I don't care. I take you for you. And I have expectations of you, and you have expectations of me as an employer. And if we can meet them, we can get on really well, and that's what I try and live by.
Yeah, that it really is going the extra mile, and like I say, that forms bonds with teammates, and so valuable. I mean, I know we're kind of off piece with the questions and the orders and everything now, but sorry to go back to it. It's a bit quite painful for you. But you mentioned about your mother and her being an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Was that all you ever knew, or was it a certain phase?
I don't really remember it from childhood, but I suppose my dad worked away a lot. So, and my mum would bring up 3 boys, which is a challenge.
Yeah.
Like, it'd drive anyone to
hard.
alcohol.
Yeah.
And I mean, certainly my older brother was really naughty, and he caused a lot of problems. And, you know, we were quite boisterous at home. We'd fight. We were loud. We were messy. So I think there's a lot of that. I don't know where it started and how it started. I remember from around 14, 15, I would catch my mum drinking a mug of wine in the morning, pretending it's coffee. And you'd smell the mug afterwards and you know it wasn't. She got in a couple of car accidents, and back in the sort of late 80s and early 90s or mid 90s, I don't think it was common practice to breathalyze all the time. So if she got in a car accident in the middle of the day, she was a blonde lady that just got in a car accident, nice blonde lady, but the reality is she's probably drank a bottle of wine at that point, and we only knew that sort of later. And then it got really bad, and she'd be drinking couple of litres of spirits a day, and she'd be hiding it in washing machines, under washing, under bedding, because we would go around, we'd pour it away, you know, try and get it back on track. And, you know, the help isn't always there, and it's a lot better now. And I do work with some of the local charities now on that, because I think it's important. You know, Recovery Connections does a fantastic job with recovering addicts, and I think it's really important that someone is there for an addict, and rather than, you know, sees them as a hindrance. And my mum was an addict. It was an illness. Yeah. We took her to the hospital. I physically took her myself, drove there, and they wouldn't allow me in the room unless she gave permission, which she's not going to, because she's not going to answer the questions truthfully. So I explained to the doctor, she's not going to answer you the truth. And she comes out of that meeting and said, me and the doctor have said we're going to slowly wean it off, and we're going to start at 3 glasses a day. And then I said, that's no medical decision at all, you know. But the reality is the doctors had no power unless she said, I've got a problem, can you help me? So so eventually it led to my oldest brother found her in the house. She'd had internal bleeding and bled to death. Yeah.
Oh, horrendous! Yeah, I really do believe it's an illness, and people need help. And
it's proof. If someone like George Best, with all the money in the world and a new liver, can't change, what help does someone who's on low or no income, you know, or who's got? I always, you know, some people that have limited prospects or feel like they've got limited prospects. That's an easy route out to mask the pain. What help have they got, or what chance have they got if someone like George Best can't get off it? You don't have any.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and does that affect your relationship with alcohol now?
Yeah, I think it does, because my dad's probably had quite an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. My dad worked away a lot, but his first night home, he would go to the pub. He'd come home drunk, and he would probably go to the pub Friday, Saturday, Sunday and drink. And so you're really conscious of it now. And I used to have a period where I'd not drink for 3 months of every year, just to prove to myself that I didn't have a problem with alcohol and that sort of thing. But, you know, these days I'm so focused on other things, whether it be training or work or whatever. And I drink to socialise, not drink. There's a good, actually, one of my PTIs in the army always used to say, drink to your limits, not through your limits. And so, you know, there's, I think as you get older, you learn your tolerance for what you can drink, how much of what you can drink before it, you know, becomes an issue or whatever else. And you can also recognise yourself, I've drank twice this week. I really shouldn't have any more. Like, and I don't restrict myself to say, I only drink at weekends. I don't drink during the week, because I think you're driving yourself then to temptation and to excess.
That can cause problems.
Yeah, I think if it's Tuesday night and we've had a great week of results and I'm going to have a glass of red with my friends that I'm meeting that night, or my wife or whatever, fine. If it's Saturday and you're going out to watch the rugby and you're going for a couple of beers, great. You shouldn't tie yourself into certain days and times, because otherwise it then will become I've got to cram it in and I've got to get that in. So I don't live by that either.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely used to be a binge drinker. Yeah. Since having a family, I found I don't have any time for hangovers. Yeah. I don't even have any time to drink. So it's a problem solved. And actually, I feel so much more focused. Yeah. I used to drink so much on a weekend that I couldn't even concentrate on Monday, sometimes even Tuesday. Got to Wednesday, I started to get a clear head. But yeah, it's not healthy.
And then your diet and your training goes out. Yes. You wake up in the morning, you eat rubbish when you drink. You wake up in the morning, you want rubbish to eat. Then you can't be bothered to go to the gym. You're lethargic, so you don't do that. And then you do probably very little that day. And so I find you really non-productive. And I like to be productive with every minute of every day I have.
Me too. Yeah, absolutely. And I like to think as well, the culture, maybe, hopefully by the time my children grow up, the culture's kind of dying out of the binge drinking, and it's more coffee shops and stuff. Maybe that's how maybe smoking was a while ago. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but that's just how I feel that some young people are choosing to do different things.
No, I agree. My eldest is 22. She very rarely drinks now. She's probably twice in her life she's come home drunk, and that was probably a product of, we moved back from Dubai and she'd never touched it, and then all of a sudden COVID, and then she's 18 and it's like, right, well, now I'm allowed to. I'm going to go out, and
it has to be done.
Yeah, I think she got in a couple of states early on, but at 21 years old now, she's taken the decision that she'd rather have a cup of tea and go to bed. She'd rather have a coffee. My youngest, she's got a good relationship with coffee, probably too good at times, and she's 16 and she makes a nice coffee every morning before school, and she likes to go for a Costa or a Starbucks, and they'll go together.
Yeah,
they'll get in the car and drive down to Starbucks, and I love it. I think it's brilliant. I really love the fact that they've got a much healthier outlook around food and alcohol, and then other things, sort of drugs and smoking, that are so prevalent in society. It's really good that their generation, and I expect when your kids come of age, it will have gone diluted even further.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, hopefully means less sleepless nights, but there's always something to worry about. I guess.
Definitely.
Back to the army. So how many wars did you fight in?
2. So I did an active tour of Kosovo, and then I was in the Iraq War, the second Iraq War. So I went out crossing the border before the war, and then was out. So that was the longest tour I've ever done. I did 7 months straight without coming home and
working every day.
Well, you live in fighting, yeah. So you're just trying to stay alive, I suppose, and meet the objective of whatever that objective was. And there was a period of around 8 to 10 weeks where we had no contact with our family at all because of it's too dangerous to give the enemy position where our position was. So minimal phone, minimal mail or backup support. So it was that was tough.
I mean, I can see how that's really tough for you, but what about your partner or wife? That must just be so hard with no contact.
So, I think I was 21, so that'd make her about 19. So we were young, and Macy had been a year and a bit old. So, it was,
and
tough time.
Did you ever think you were going to die out there?
Yeah, definitely. I think when the first missiles started coming down, you're very scared. Anybody who tells you that you're not, you're either very stupid or you're not telling the truth. I think most serving soldiers will have told you at some point they were scared for their life. It doesn't always cross your mind at the time, and I think it was easier in the early days when the Scud missiles were being fired, because they would land and you'd see them and because you've had a warning. So you actually just sat there hoping it doesn't land on you. When you're in contacts and firefights, that's very different. And obviously, I think we were talking coming on as well. In the private military world, you're getting a lot more of that. And when I did the private military side, more than 5 times I've thought I was going to die at least. And it's not a nice thing to say that you actually thought that was it. That was the end. But it's only sort of afterwards generally you realise it.
Okay, right.
Because you're in autopilot. You're looking for hard cover. You're looking for how many rounds have I got? Who's in my team? How many people are out there? How are we getting out of this? Where's the fire coming from? Where's the safe place to run to? Where's the med kit? Who's got the comms? All of this you process in a millisecond as to, right, this is what I need to do. That's my decision. And it really sort of helps me make quite quick decisions now, which sometimes I get wrong. But I'm very quick to make a decision because you have to process information so quickly in that moment. I did it for 6 years, non-stop. And so for 6 years, I was honed into, right, process all of this information at you right now and make a decision that keeps you and all your team alive. And for me, it was always calculated risk. My end goal was to get back to my girls. I was doing a job. I wasn't out there to try and live some hero dream. I wasn't out there to try and fuel some itch of being in a war zone. I was doing it out of necessity because I had to pay a mortgage and pay bills and bring my kids up. So my goal was to get home. So what is the safest option here for us to get out of here and take that? And then afterwards, you go, I was close. I was pretty close where I thought I could have died there. There's been a couple of times where I've sat down and you're sort of shaking afterwards, and we used to go. I suppose the army gives you an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, because if someone's going on leave, you have a drink. Someone comes back, you have a drink. Someone dies, you have a drink. Someone gets promoted, you have a drink. You're nearly getting a contact, or you nearly die, you have a drink. So you tend to come back, talk about the contact, write your reports, and then go to the bar. And everyone has a bit of decompression in the bar, and you have a couple of beers and
But you must need it, because your nerves must be, or your anxiety level, constant on high. I mean, people talk about being anxious, but you're not about to die all the time, being shot at and fired at. How do you cope with that, like, day in, day out?
I don't know, if I'm honest. I don't know. And I suppose it helps me now with who I am and what I do in business now, because people, one of my strongest and probably one of my worst traits is I'm 1,000 miles an hour. And people always say to me, sometimes I'm too far ahead. I'm not taking everyone with me on the journey, because I know what the objective is and I know how we're going to get there, and I've got that clear in my head. And sometimes I don't communicate that very well to my team, and I expect them to know. And my wife and my kids as well, and she tells me all the time, she'll be like, well, you haven't explained that to me. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, you should understand it. You should know it. Why don't you know it? Like, I'm getting frustrated with that. But it's just me needing to slow down and explain myself a little bit better, because you've been through that. So I don't know how you live with that, but I do think that's part of the reason why I don't sleep very well now.
Okay, right.
And that's, the conversation we had before, that I've been awake since 10 to 3 this morning. That's not unusual. I wake up probably most days between 2 and 4, but equally I'll wake up at the slightest sound. It can be a leaf blowing and I'll hear it from outside, and I'll be up, because...
And on guard.
Yeah, you all the years that I spent, certainly when there was a bit towards the end where we were in the green zone and it was all getting a bit fractured, and the military were coming in and threatening with weapons while you were asleep, kicking you out your rooms and taking over your rooms over corruption and money and what have you. And this happened a couple of times where I woke up to an AK being put in my face, and you're like, oh, because it was the army, you was reasonably relaxed. You assumed they wouldn't shoot you. But if you made any sort of rash moves, or if you got angry, it could have escalated the situation. And we used to sleep with pistols under our pillow and weapons at the foot of our bed. So we had weapons in reach, and it became, when this happened quite regularly, it became a thing to sleep with my pistol under my pillow just in case. And you're sort of anxious. And then we had to move into what we call the red zone, which is basically in the middle of Baghdad, and we were just in a villa, and you guard it yourselves, and everybody knows you're living there. They know it's full of Westerners, and at any one point, if they get themselves together and organise well enough, they can come and take you hostage or come and kill you. And this was similar time to when Abu John started chopping people's heads off as well. I was in Mosul when he did the first guy, the aid worker. I forget his name, unfortunately, but I was in Mosul then, and I was at breakfast, and there's hundreds of journalists on the phone going, "You've got to get me out of here. Like, I need to leave. This is crazy." And I'm sat there going, I've got another 6 weeks. So it's
crazy.
This is terrible.
Crazy.
So so I think you always sort of, because you lived in that high pressure environment of it's kill or be killed for so long. I don't sleep very well now, but I'm fine with that. I function very well on a few hours sleep. I've been to the gym this morning. I've worked all day. I'll go to the gym again this evening, and I'm good with that. It's fine.
And would you say you have some form of PTSD? Or?
No, I don't think so. And I think that there's a couple of things for PTSD with me. I've got a lot of friends who've been in my situation and are fine, and I've got some friends that have PTSD, real PTSD. And I think there's two types of PTSD. There's one where there's a very real PTSD where people relive the situation, flashbacks from incidents. And I have a friend that lives locally, and very much that's his situation, and I know him very well. It's not an act. It's not, it's just because of what he's been through. And the other people that get diagnosed with PTSD, I think it's more depression, and it's more about loss. There was a meme that went round when I was out in Iraq that said PTSD, the feeling that you'll never be this effing awesome again. And there's that feeling that actually, when you go through these situations, you get through them, you are pretty invincible. And you do. And we used to train 4 hours a day, and you are living in some sort of Western movie where you're actually getting away with it every day, and you get this sort of ego, and you get this bravado, and you also, when you go home and you tell people what you do, you get this sort of respect over what you do. And then all of a sudden, you come home and work in a factory, and you're working alongside guys who've never done anything but worked in a factory, and they're telling you what to do, and they're telling you that you're not good enough, or you're not this, and you're going, hold on a minute. A few months ago, I was leading men into battle. That's not PTSD, but it can be diagnosed as PTSD.
Right.
In my view, in non-medical view, is that I think it gets miscalculated sometimes by civilian doctors or civilian employers, that it's PTSD and they're reliving. They're not. They're looking to be part of a team again. They're looking to be part of something that they're proud of, that they want to be part of, is my take on it. And when I talk to people, a lot of them will agree and say, yeah, I sort of get that. And, for me, when I left the army, the first thing I did was join a civilian rugby team. I mean, there's nothing much more closer than rugby, 15 blokes putting the body on the line, fighting, pure aggression for 80 minutes, then get in the bar and have a couple of beers. It's about as close as you're going to get in
So
civilian
true.
life.
Yeah.
And you put your bodies on the line for each other. In the military, you put your body on the line for your oppo, your guy next to you, your mate, and that's what you do. So
Yeah.
I think for me, it's we have to be better at getting veterans into something they're passionate about, where they feel involved in, where they feel part of a team. There's a great charity over in Lancashire called Into the Wild, and I know that they do a lot where they take veterans out and they go team building and do different things as well. And it's run by actually one of my old former officers, my former adjutant, and I didn't know, and we got put in touch through LinkedIn. And fantastic I see what he does with veterans, and there's lots of pockets of people doing stuff with veterans. I attend the Veterans Breakfast Club in Middlesbrough. I do a lot with the Armed Forces Business Forum and the Armed Forces Covenant, and supporting veterans back into work and supporting their families. And I think it's my job as a civilian now business owner and employer to explain to other civilian owners how you can tap into these immense skill sets and work ethics, and how you get them to integrate as part of a team quickly, and that's what I try and do.
Absolutely. You've got so many skills to offer, and I was so surprised when I found out there wasn't much support for people leaving, but sport is a tremendous vehicle, I think, to help them on the road to recovery. And you've made an amazing, I totally agree with your 2 points about PTSD. And I really believe in the value of sport and what it can offer, both from kind of transferable skills to business, but then, almost helping people get through things in certain situations. So that's wonderful. One thing I wanted to ask, when you were in the wars, actually fighting, did you believe in the cause or the mission from the army?
Yeah, I did at the time, obviously, and I think most people will say that. I did. Our objective, one of our early objectives in the Iraq War was to secure a bridge into an oil field, which seemed perfectly understandable to me at the time. And the excuse was obviously that we've got to protect the oil supply for the Iraqi people. We're looking after the Iraqi people. But I then went back as private military, and I saw how many British and American organisations, and I was part of that, were profiting from that, from all of that oil. But I think we have to understand how important those oil fields are. And the recent Ukraine-Russia war shows you. So had we not have protected those assets, we could potentially have been in a situation like we are now, maybe even worse. Iraq is one of the biggest oil fields in the world, produces so much oil all around the world. And if that was to stop overnight and those fields were to be blown up, be a lot of people handing the car keys in and not turning the lights on for a while we picked up the gap and redid that. So sixes and 2 3s for me. I saw the sort of end of it all. So I saw the war, I saw the bad transition side, and then as I was leaving and towards the end of my corporate days where I used to fly in and out, I saw how it was becoming to transition back into the Iraqi hands. There was a lot more Iraqi employees on the oil fields, people trained. They weren't just bodies anymore where we used to in the early days, they were just labourers, they were this. They were now supervisors, they were managers, they were team leaders, they were surveyors, and a lot of the oil companies would go in taking groups of Iraqis and taking them to the likes of Petronas were very good at it. They would take a group of guys to Singapore and they would train them up for 2 years, and then they would put them back in Iraq and they'd be fully trained Iraqi people looking after Iraqi oil fields with money going back into their economy. And so, I've got faith that it will come good again. It's one of the richest mineral resource countries in the world. And so they've got a huge amount of wealth there. So if they can manage the corruption, get a stable political system in place, I think that it will come good again.
Oh, brilliant. And did you lose anyone close to you while you were out fighting?
I've lost a lot of friends and colleagues. No one super close, no real close friends. Through different means, people who've died in battle, and a few that have killed themselves afterwards. One not so long ago, a guy that I did basic training with, phase 2. He actually joined the Special Forces as a medic, and he killed himself recently, a couple of years back. And a few of the guys that I worked with out in the private military sector either got maimed or killed. There was a lot. I think, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but it's 300 odd British soldiers died during the Iraq War. What was never talked about was the British ex-military contractors. And so as contractors, we weren't a number. We weren't a number that was counted in the newspapers. And back in 2008, we would lose 8 to 10 British guys a day. There was a lot of people being killed that were contractors. And because they were contractors and they've gone back there of their own accord, and yes, earning very good money, it didn't matter to the papers, to the numbers. And so the last time I saw a figure on it, it was somewhere around 2,500 British contractors had died in Iraq. So if you put that against the 330 odd from the military, it's a huge number. And the similar will have happened in Afghanistan and various other conflict zones around the world, where contractors, people like me who were veterans, have gone back to do a job and sadly have been killed.
Oh, that's really shocking. And how do you remember these people who sadly lost their lives for this? I mean, one thing that Chris, my husband, is very passionate about is Remembrance Day. That he always gets very involved. He likes to do readings at work, and I think that's a lovely way of embodying it. But do you do anything different? Yeah,
no, I think Remembrance Day is one of the most important days, and it's one of those days as well where we all come back together. Chris was Royal Marine, so he was Navy,
Yeah.
I won't hold that against him. some of the greatest guys I've ever worked with were Royal Marines, but the Navy, the RAF, and the Army, we sort of come together on Remembrance Day, and more recently the police and the fire as well, get involved on that, who have also lost people doing a uniformed service job. And I think it's really important to say that just because they've either sadly been burnt in a fire or died in the line of duty in the police, and the other guy got shot in Afghanistan, it's very similar. We've all given our lives for uniformed services for the better of our civilization, our country, and I think it's really important. So they're the days when we come together and we talk about not just the bad stuff but the fun stuff. There's always some funny stories that comes out, and we all have our own drinks. And in the Army it's port, and the Navy they drink the rum, and I think at the RAF probably champagne or something. I don't know. But the rest
what
of
is
us,
in the Marines?
They'll be rum because they're Navy.
Okay.
So
Right.
and we normally have our drinks. So normally on Remembrance Day there'll be quite a lot of port drank if there's a lot of Army guys around, and that's sort of how we celebrate and think about absent friends. And then I suppose depending on who it is and where it was, there'll be anniversaries that you celebrate and how close they were to you. A lot of people will celebrate certain anniversaries as well of deaths.
Do you ever feel a sense of guilt that perhaps they got taken rather than you?
I think I don't really struggle with a lot of the things I've seen and done because that point before where I'm 100 miles an hour, because I'm always trying to think about the next thing.
Yeah.
How are we getting better? How are we improving? How do we get on tomorrow? I never really have time to look back. I look back to analyse my business and go, how can we be better? I look back to that, but I don't look back on the dark days and the bad days. And it's not a conscious decision. It's a subconscious decision. I suppose I just compartmentalize that and I go, yeah, that happened. That was pretty bad. Let's move forward. And how do we get, because otherwise I might as well, I may fall into that trap as well.
True. Maybe it's subconscious self-preservation on some level, but
I think so. Yeah,
positive either way. Driving yourself forward.
Yeah, like I said, I've got the 3 girls, my 3 girls to think about, and so I'm no use to them as someone who's wallowing in self-pity or is an alcoholic or whatever else it is. So for me, it's like, how do I make our lives better, move forward? How do I make the people around me's lives better, move forward? How do I help others move forward? Rather than me thinking about whatever I've done or been and seen.
Yeah, good point. You mentioned fun stories. Are there any you could mention?
Not really.
That's fine. That's fine.
Because I think we want to keep it sort of PG-13. I do remember one funny story of a guy that I used to work with, and he was ex-Royal Marine. Your husband may have known him, and we got nicknamed the Golden Saw. Saw's a weapon. He used to fire that quite often, and his vehicle was blown up in an IED, upside down. The saws hit him on the head. He was in the boot, and sort of made him a little bit concussed. Contact's coming down from the right, so the guys get out of the vehicles. There's some hard cover on the left, so they start laying down some covering fire, run up to the hard cover, start laying down some more covering fire, and Lee got out of the car and blood pouring from his head, and he gets his saw out and just starts letting off rounds left, right and centre, and then he runs up to the hard standing, doing something what we call hard targeting. He's basically zigzagging, all the way up, jumps over the hard cover, gets down, and the guy turns around to him next to him. He says, "Jesus, Lee," he said, "you," in other words, I think he used stronger words. He said, "You a professional there." He says, "All that hard targeting." He said, "What are you talking about? I thought I was running straight." He was completely concussed, no idea where he was, and ended up killing 6 of the enemy off the back of it. And so he got nicknamed the Golden Saw. They dipped his weapon in gold, and it got put up in the bar. And that was so that was quite funny. Another story about Lee, which was probably quite funny as well, was we were in the Ministry of Oil, and this was the time when they'd stopped allowing weapons to go inside. But when you had your body armour under your shirt, there was a cavity in your chest. Well, I suppose if you've got a chest, I don't know. And you could hide a pistol down there. So I used to put my pistol down there. Lee used to like his North Face. He was a designer. He was a designer militia, and so he'd be covered in North Face or Berghaus, and he's got his North Face elasticated pants on, and he's got his 9mm tucked down the back of his pants. And we walk in, the guys go, "Have you got any weapons?" Like, no, you can search me. And they touch your body armour and you can't feel the gun. Touch Nick and Lee, and they was like, "Yeah, fine." Got no weapons. And then Lee starts walking, and he suddenly stops, and he's like, "Oh no." He's like, "What's up?" And he said, "Oh, it's falling down." I was like, "Oh my God." And he's walking, he walks another couple of steps, and then all of a sudden at the bottom of his trousers drops this pistol, clang, 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 on this marble floor, and everybody stops, and people get a little bit twitchy with their AKs, and everyone's like looking at each other. And Lee's from Manchester, he goes, "Oh, sorry, I forgot about that one. I'll take it back the car now." Just walks off, and that was it. Everyone's like, the police and the military didn't know what to do. Do we shoot him? Do we arrest him? Do we just laugh at him? What is this going on? And I just went, I've got to go. I've got a meeting. I just walked off and went with the client to the meeting. That was quite funny.
Oh, brilliant. You've mentioned about your 3 girls in your life. Are they your purpose at the moment, or is there something else?
Yeah, I think growing my business to provide something for them that they're proud of is really important to me, and always has been. My wife and I, we've been for the full lifestyle. We were quite poor when we first got together. We didn't have a lot of money. I used to have to work on the doors or deliver Domino's pizzas outside of the army just to try and make money, and I always wanted to provide a life for them that was different. And I feel like we're on the path to doing that. So,
I love that. And what values are important to you?
I think integrity. I think it really important for me is somebody doing what they say they're going to do. Yeah. And that's I think that's the biggest thing.
It's dying these days as well.
Yeah, I don't like what we say in the army. A pat on the back's a recce for the knife. People pretending to be your friends and smiles to your face and actually stabbing you in the back behind, because I'm very honest. What you see is what you get. I'll tell you anything you want to know. But if I don't want to answer it, I'll tell you I won't answer it. But I'll tell you whatever you want to know. And I'm really honest. And if I say I'm going to do something, I tend to do it, and I tend to see it through. And so I expect the same from other people that I meet. But I've learned to expect different results. Yeah,
me too. Unfortunately, integrity is really important to me. People sometimes are shocked when you do things that you say you're going to do now, which says it all, really. Yeah. Would you say you're happy right now?
Some days, yeah. I think others not. I think nobody's happy all the time. Yeah. That's part of being human. You have days where you're angry. You have days where you're stressed. You have days where you're sad. And it's how you manage those emotions, I suppose, and to be happy. Yeah. So I definitely. Me and my wife are in the best place we've ever been, I think, which is really nice to see and say. And I think I've got a better relationship with my girls than I've ever had, that makes me really happy. That my family were close, me and my girls. Yeah.
I suppose you've come through some really hard times. If you
Yeah.
can make a marriage work while you're out in Iraq or wherever for
Yeah.
6 months or 7 months at a time, then I think you can do anything, really. Amazing. What's on your bucket list?
I don't have a great deal on there because
probably done it all.
I've done so much that I forget what I've done. And, you know, I've been on TV. I filmed a movie with Brad Pitt. I've travelled around the world. I've been in the army. I've lived in Dubai. You know, we've done so much that I don't have a real bucket list. Obviously, the row next year, we're rowing the Atlantic for charity. And that's been an itch that I've wanted to scratch for a long time. I've always wanted to do one last big amazing challenge, and this I wanted to do this 12 years ago, and it's kind of been burning away at me, and I feel like I'm starting to rot now. My shoulders are bad and knees and everything else, so I've got one last something in me, and this is it. So this is why I'm training twice a day and training really hard, ready for this. We got actually official confirmation of our place last week, so
Amazing.
That's it. We're definitely in.
Tell me more about it. So how does it work, over what time period?
So it's the toughest endurance race in the world. It's 3,000 miles from La Gomera in the Canary Islands to Antigua in the Caribbean. You row across the equator. Unfortunately, it does mean another Christmas I've got to miss because of where you're rowing. The safest time to row is over Christmas and New Year, so you set off sort of mid-December and hopefully get there mid to early Jan. It's 5 of us in our team. We were originally a 4-man team, but we've grown to a 5-man team, which is fine. It's going to be great. 4 of us are ex-military, not because I went looking for ex-military. It's just that we tend to be the craziest idiots that will do something like this. So, and another fellow franchisee who's doing it, who does lots of challenges for charity. And so yeah, we're super excited about it. A little bit nervous. Definitely had the butterflies when I saw the email saying you've got a place oh, we've really got to do this now. I told so many people, and now, so we've ordered the boat. We're on. That's what we're doing. And so, December next year we set off, and hopefully world record. That's what we're going for.
Okay, yeah, just not it's not enough to just do it.
No way. I'm too competitive for that. I want a world record. So the fastest 5-man team is 33 days. So I want to do it in 30 and a half, 31, which is more than feasible. I've got a plan for the team. It's our plan, but I'm kind of trying to drive it as much as I can so that we are the most prepared we can be when we step on that boat on mid-December next year.
I love it. And which charity did you say it's for?
So we're doing it for Ronald McDonald's House Charities, and they have 13 houses around the UK, and they provide free accommodation for parents and guardians for children who are sick, having operations, terminally ill sometimes, at specialist hospitals around the UK. Really important charity. £25 a day covers a room for a family for a day. So we're going to put a real ambitious target on. I haven't set that target yet, so I'm not going to announce it publicly, but it will be upwards of 1 million. And I'd like to say that, you know, we could support maybe every house for one full year. It'd be a great target to go for. So maybe that's something we're going to set to go for. But
amazing. You'll have to let me know how to sponsor you when it comes
do.
about. And just last thing, movie with Brad Pitt.
Oh yeah. So I think, you know, talking about trying to do everything, I'll say yes to anything pretty much and do anything I can. I was flying back from Baghdad on a plane when I was living in Dubai in the summer. My wife and kids had gone home to visit family, and there was an audition for Star Trek in the paper. And so I called my friend up in Dubai. I said, "Hey, do you fancy doing this weekend? Like, why don't we go and do an audition for a movie? I'd really like to see how an A-list movie's put together." So I got the part of the giant alien king known as Barlow. I was the tallest alien in the spaceport. I was so tall I couldn't go in the 3D scanner. I had a 5-meter long cape. I was 9.5 feet tall with my prosthetic head. And I got to waddle around a spaceport for 2 days and get paid 600 quid for doing it, and got to see an A-list movie put together, got to speak to people like John Chow, Sean Pegg, Chris Pratt, all these guys, and had good chats with them. And yeah, it was really cool. While I was doing it, the production team was like, "Oh, you're ex-military, yeah. So we're doing a war movie in Abu Dhabi next week. Wouldn't tell us what it is. Do you want to come and do it? We need more ex-soldiers who know how to handle weapons." Yeah, okay, why not? I just said yeah. So I took a carload of ex-military guys I know from Dubai, one Navy guy, unfortunately, and and we went down and I played a Danish officer in this movie that turned out to be War Machine with Brad Pitt. So I'm in the background giving a soldier a four-finger pointing tool while Brad's doing his monologue to all the troops, and then we did a couple of other scenes. We did a bar scene, and then they asked me to come back and do some of the fight scenes, the war scenes, but it meant like 2 weeks. And I said, look, I can give you a couple of days at the weekend, but I've actually got a full-time job. I'm running 2 continents. I'm looking after 22,000 people, so no, I can't. So I didn't do any more filming with that, but yeah, got to meet Brad and I've done a movie with Brad Pitt.
That's amazing, cool. Just to say that, just part-time movie star as well, on top of everything else that you've done. Oh, you've been wonderful. I've just been so intrigued. It's been hard to try and remember what questions I had because I was just so enthralled in what you were talking about. Amazing what you've done, and obviously amazing what you're still going to do. So thank you so much, Dean.
No worries.
We always end the show on some regular questions. It's kind of on a scale to 1 to 10, 1 being worst, 10 being the best. You kind of rate yourself a series of 9 in your case questions. So number 1, how good looking would you say you are?
Or when I get my teeth done, maybe a 6. Right now, 5.
Oh, but Danish movie star, you know.
I'm not too full of myself. I don't take myself too seriously. So,
how funny are you?
Yeah, I'm going to put that one further up, 8 or 9. Yeah,
brilliant.
Definitely.
What are your cooking skills like?
I'm pretty good at cooking. I do most of the cooking in our house, or used to, as I've got more busy with the business. My wife's had to learn to cook 20 years on from burning our first pizza that she ever made us. So yeah, I'd say I'm an 8.
Brilliant. I can totally relate to your wife, by the way. Are you a good singer?
My wife would say no. I like to think I am, and I'm game for a bit of karaoke. And I did get once, my wife was asked once in a bar if I was the real George Ezra as I sang the homegrown alligator, that one, what it's called.
Yeah.
Shotgun. Yeah, Shotgun.
Would you give us a sample?
No, but thanks.
I had to ask it.
It's not the right light.
Of course. That's amazing, though. So what would you do, 7? It'd have to surely be a 10.
No, I think I'd put myself at an 8. I can't hit certain notes, but I can. The songs I do sing, I think I'm pretty good at.
Pick your ones.
Yeah,
carefully. That's
Commodore's
what it's all about.
easy.
Oh, yes.
Been known to sing Copacabana, Shotgun.
Any of those? Do you want to try?
Yeah, and I've done no.
And the Saved by the Bell.
Yeah.
There's a few more. You must be pretty good at drinking alcohol.
Yeah, I reckon I've got a good tolerance for alcohol. Yeah. I'd be a 9, I reckon, at least.
Brilliant. Hope you don't think that's an insensitive question.
No, it's
actually.
okay.
No, I know.
Yeah.
Parenting skills.
It's a difficult one. I read this one on your list, and I think I'm a 4. I'd like to be a better dad than what I've been, and I'm trying to do that now. I haven't been there for a lot of the time, and when I was younger and more stressed, I probably dealt with my parenting differently than how I would now as an older parent. If I was to have kids again now, I would do things very differently, and I just wish some of the times the conversations I have with my kids in my head, I just wish I could have them with them instead of holding back because of the person who I am or the way I've been brought up or whatever. You want to address that too. So I wish I was a better parent, and I do try every day to be as good as I can be, but yeah.
Oh, that's so brutally honest. I really appreciate that answer. How good a friend are you?
10. Yes.
Yeah,
you want to be my friend. I will look after you. I'll do anything for you. Yeah.
Brilliant. How intelligent are you?
I would say I have good EQ over IQ. My memory fails me as I've got older, but I can read people and situations really well. I think I'm quite good with people, and so I'd put myself at an 8.
I think EQ is more important than IQ. You know?
I agree.
And there's so many, I always say it's a bit of a trick question anyway, because there's so many aspects of intelligence. You know, it's not just a case of, yes, I'm intelligent, you know.
Yeah.
Are you a kind person?
Yes, I was a medic in the army. I think the word help, whenever a human asks you for help, is a really important word. And I think that wherever you can, if somebody asks you for help, you should try and do it. On whatever scale that is. And that's whether that's borrowing a little bit of money or actually I'm in a really serious depression here, I need some help, or can you help me move house? You know, can you help me come around and work this out? Yeah, absolutely. Because if we all said yes and helped each other, the world would be a lot better place.
Oh, that's a lovely answer to end on. I still need a number though.
Oh, good. Yeah, 9.
9, brilliant. And yes, you don't want to answer the final one, and I don't like asking that final question.
Yeah,
so that's all good.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Brilliant. Oh,
Right.
You've been amazing, Dean. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much. Yeah, thank you.